Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Cherry Beckert's 2022 Government and Public Sector two-day virtual conference. If you are just now tuning in, my name is Madeline Robbins, and I am our producer for Cherry Beckert. It is great to see so many of you back here with us for the second session today, and many of you are returning from our first day of the conference, which happened on Tuesday. We have a variety of presentations planned for you, and we'll be offering up 1 hour of CPE for each session. So if you attend all three today, that's a total of 3 hours. The rest of today's agenda is comprised of dashboards and analytics, and we'll be closing out our conference with a North Carolina specific state auditor update. We hope to see you on the remaining sessions. Before we get started, we do have some quick housekeeping items to address. In order to receive CPE, you must answer at least 3 of the 4 polling questions and attend for the full 50 minutes. CPE certificates will be issued via email within 10 days. If it has reached 10 days and you have not heard anything, please email cbhlearning@cbh.com. We will have a recorded version of this webinar along with the slides available in about a week. It'll be sent to you via email and also posted to our website. If you do have any questions during the webinar, please type those into the Q&A window located in your control panel. And one more thing to note, we will be sharing a short survey at the conclusion of the webinar. We value your feedback and ask that you take part. With that, I am happy to introduce you to our speaker for today, Louis Gallardo, Advisory Partner Principal and Digital Platform and Analytics Leader with Cherry Beckert. He's here to provide knowledge and understanding of how to best chart a data journey, along with identifying key questions that the business needs to be able to answer consistently. Please, Louis, take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you, Maddie, and appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for your time and interest in this topic that I'm definitely passionate about on dashboards and analytics. And going to spend the next probably about 48 minutes here with you. So we'll look forward to talking, and we'll jump right into this topic today. So what we have, I think we went through the CPE piece, so I think we're good there. I'll jump right into what we're going to cover here. As Maddie said, I lead our digital platform and analytics here at Cherry Beckert. I've got about 25 years in this space relative to the chasm between organization and technology consulting. I live in Northern California, love to get out in the outdoors and have a Latin background that I bring to bear with me. So today, what we're looking at doing, we're going to go through a few pieces on the, what the maturity model looks like relative to analytics and data and automation. And my thesis is that there is a convergence of those two things. And many times you'll hear people talking about two different ones, and we'll address how that's bridged today and getting insights to actions. We'll look at specific digital platforms as those emerge a little bit more broadly, how that's relevant for specific industries or sub verticals, and then how newer technologies are shaping all of this as it goes forward. So hopefully you find this informative at a minimum and intriguing and outstanding information you can take away with you and use as you move forward. So got through the introduction piece. We'll talk about initially what's the data and automation opportunity and why data and automation, why those two things together. As I talked about, we'll hit what's the maturity model look like and what's that journey through that maturity model. We'll get into a little bit on the methodology and our perspective at Cherry Beckert on how we go about improving and continuing to advance through that maturity model. And then we'll get into some digital platforms and how that relates to a little bit more broad set and hitting the automation and analytics area. And we'll also have a few case studies as we go along through here to give you a flavor of what some other organizations have done and how they went about it and what their outcomes were. So action-packed, going to jump right into it. And we already have right away one poll. So the question is, does your organization have a well articulate strategy and approach for bridging the gap between analytics and insights. Yes, we have everything under control. Yes, we have started, but need help and guidance. No, but we recognize the need for this type of strategy. No, we are not sure what to do. We'll give another little bit. Great, everything's clicking in fast. Great, looks like we're settling there. Looks like the most say no, but we recognize the need for this type of strategy. So that's great. And by the way, you're not alone. I think if you look more broadly, this is clearly where organizations are in their journey relative to this area. The next second is we've started but need help and guidance. The good news is most, there's only 16% that are not sure what to do. And a good 17% are very confident they have everything under control. So, if you look at this, 68%, a good portion are starting down this journey, and some recognize that there's some need for help and strategy, which is great. And I think that's being able to recognize where you are is a key piece of the journey. So hopefully everybody can see there, 93% of you participated. So thank you. And we'll keep it going. Okay. All right. So data and automation, what's the opportunity? I think everybody knows at this point, data is the most powerful asset for growth. Data is the most valuable commodity in any organization today, and harnessed correctly can bring a tremendous amount of value to you, your constituents, your clients, whoever it is that you're serving out there. Data fuels profitable decisions, improves business. Really using data-driven decision-making process is proven to be efficient. I know a lot of us feel we have a lot of experience and can utilize our instincts, but having different data points and helping us does improve decisions, and that's been proven over time and continues to those that excel leverage data in an efficient manner. Another kind of seems like unrelated stat, but there's 1.9 job requisitions for every job seeker in the labor market. We'll talk a little bit more about why that's important here in this conversation. But just know that the net of that is there's a lot of jobs and openings right now, and not enough people to do it. Internet users today produce about 2.5 quintillion bytes of data every day. That number just keeps getting bigger. It even just blows my mind every time I read it, and been doing that through my career. So the explosion of data is going to continue as we get more and more pervasive, devices and things that are going to collect and generate data. And then just the sheer volume, automation is a necessity. There is no way that anybody's going to be able to understand or analyze just with the human brain all that data. So these are just some things to think about in terms of what's the opportunity here, and how do we go about leveraging that kind of from a macro standpoint. You get a sense of how we kind of think about things on our side, on how we help in this from a Cherry Bekaert perspective in addressing this. So looking at how we can accelerate data-driven insights, giving people a consistent experience so that they feel comfortable going through this, thinking about scalability, flexibility, doing more with less. These are some of the things that we as a consulting organization, as a firm, really are thinking about every single day, and how we help our clients. So how do we go about it? And thinking through why data and automation, right? You hear a lot of people talk about these in two independent silos about, everything about data and analytics and insights and business intelligence, all the buzzwords, right? And then on the automation side, it's, robotic process automation. It's, being able to orchestrate and do a lot of things using, programs and automating, tasks. but rarely do you look at how are those two things working together, and what's the best way to make those harmonious, to give you the best outcome. And obviously you can break things down, which to a fundamental level of there's kind of the data, there's process, there's people. What we really advocate is that looking at this area is the best is to understand and really reflect on what it is you're trying to achieve, and breaking that down. It's not just a kind of a goals and objectives. It's really about what are the decisions and actions are you trying to take relative to your data, and what are the insights that you can glean from that are going to help you, give you the data points that are going to make that better. And then work your way backwards into that, and setting up what is the right environment for in the areas of data and process, and how you're organized to drive that actions, and moving from just insights to actions. Too many times we're stepping into situations where we're seeing people trying to build a beautiful dashboard, or, hey, I want my Excel report, or I want access to all my data. And all that ends up with is a big list or a pretty dashboard that really doesn't help you. And the question then becomes, so what? What is it that we're actually trying to achieve here? What decision are we trying to make? What action are we trying to take? And then think about, and most aren't, and this is kind of the point, is that how do I automate some of that? How do I automate that decision-making process? How do I automate the process or decision that's being made, and kicking that off? What workflows, for example, am I generating to circulate and make a decision? What robotic process, what RPA processes are we kicking off? What things are we automating relative to our process, so that it doesn't take a lot of human intervention to do that, just because it's too overwhelming and too much data there. So that's really kind of the crux of how we look at this, and how these two pieces of analytics and automation come together. So, I wanted to give a flavor of kind of what we think about in our organization relative to outcomes, and what are the things that we're trying to achieve, right? And this is a little bit high level. You can break all this down, but if you start looking through what are the things I'm trying to achieve, and from our organization, we want to understand our customer. We want to help optimize operations. We want to help them protect your business or organization, be able to drive innovation for growth, and enable workforce, meaning the talent, and being able to give them the most efficient tools and processes on how to conduct their day-to-day activities. So with this in mind, the question is, what are the outcomes you're trying to achieve? Most of you obviously coming from a public sector world are trying to serve a constituent. What is it that you're trying to drive at there? There's obviously a lot of ways to look at that in a big manner, but then working your way back to what is it that I'm trying to do with the data that I have, and making some decision, or bringing some insight, or taking some action that's going to help my constituents in their world. So a little bit more from a technology standpoint now on how this convergence of data and automation has taken place, right? So we know about the explosion of data. We know about all these devices and things that are now generating lots of data, and there is kind of a pretty good process now about how you go about managing that data, but less so on how do I then link it with some of the new enabling technologies relative to automation. And that's something that is moving fast, and being able to put those two things together is kind of key. So when you look at really the whole capture process of data, you see the different steps that we have here, from identify to evaluate, classify, extract key components, use data for business success, and then applying the enabling technologies. This is where the action comes in, right? And this is where you're leveraging another piece of the puzzle. And when you start to look at some of the automation that's coming into place, and I talked about robotic process automation. So if you aren't familiar with those tools, basically those kick off functions systematically that go and take actions relative to kicking off processes. Maybe they're posting journal entries, maybe they're generating a work request. Anything that's a kind of a repetitive process can be done, but without good data, it's just like anything else. You're going to make that process not as efficient. So some other things, obviously, there's autonomous logistics, self-driving cars, self-driving, trucks. We're there. Robotics, all these things that are leveraging data. The key is ultimately setting those up and structuring these tools to truly achieve the outcome we're looking for, and drive that in utilizing good data to get there. And really, here is the one point, and I'll bring back to one of the data points. 1.9 job requisitions for that are open out there for every job seeker. So that's double the amount of openings for people that are looking. We don't have enough people, let alone being able to handle how much data is here. So being able to figure out what is the best way to set these systems up, utilize the data in an efficient manner is a must, and it's only going to continue to explode. And I think driving that out is in the most efficient and unbiased and optimal way is where we need to go. So that leads to the second polling question. Internet users today produce about what bytes of data every day? 2.5 gigabytes, 2.5 terabytes, 2.5 quintillion bytes, none of the above. Everybody's going after it here. Good. Everybody's on their toes today. Quick, 90%. 92, slowing down. Okay, good. I think that's good. I'll end it there and share it. So yes, the answer was 2.5 quintillion bytes. I know that's a mind-blowing number, and only continues to get bigger and bigger. So okay, good. Move on to the next one here. All right. So what are kind of the benefits of this, right? I talked a little bit about it, but breaking that down a bit, what does it really give you in terms of bringing these two pieces of analytics and automation together? And some of these you can argue you can get independent with each silo of automation and analytics, but I think really the benefits of both have really unlock all that together. So what do you get? You get speed. Obviously being able to utilize both large sets of data and automate that brings you quicker return on investment. Computers are just more efficient at doing it, but they just need to learn how to do it, and that's the piece that's key. Your analysis is there, right? You can quickly do it. You can automate the analysis. You can look at data in new ways. So then you get the savings of time and money. Employee time is more expensive than computing resources by far. You get better innovation, and I think that's a key to staying ahead of the curve in terms of what constituents are looking for, what the market is looking for, what business is needed, what people are looking for. So I think getting in, being able to continue to innovate brings that productivity gains, as well as just being able to stay ahead of the curve on what people's needs and tastes and desires are. And then it just allows you to compete. I mean, obviously there's a lot of disruption, right, in going on, and if you look at analyzing particular market segments, or there's disruptors that are coming out of just complete left field, and the reason they are able to do that is because they do leverage some new model in doing that, and that's lowering the cost of entry to be able to do that. That's changing the cost to serve in a government or organizational standpoint. So those are things that are going to continue there. And I think going back to that innovation is kind of the most critical one in my mind. So all of you kind of answered that poll in the beginning. The bulk of you, some said I've got it. Some said not even working on it, but the bulk of you were looking for, hey, we're starting, we're getting down that path, or we need help. And so that kind of puts you somewhere in the middle of this maturity model. And so if you kind of look at it from an analytics complexity going from top to bottom, and then business value, organizational value, left to right, you start to see kind of the steps as you go through it. So kind of just looking at it from the bottom, obviously reports, static reports, kind of gives you a snapshot at some point in time of what's happened or what's happening. Most people are getting that, as a basic piece. Analysis, though, starting to bring in some intelligence and visualizations from a basic standpoint, being able to look at the data a little bit different versus just a big list. You kind of move to that level. Then you kind of get to more of exception analyzing of data or monitoring. So you're not maybe looking at all the data. You're starting to figure out, hey, I can't look at every single piece of data. I need some type of, exception type processing or monitoring associated with that. You're starting to move up the maturity model there. Then getting into forecasting, and whether it's just kind of manual or whether you're starting to use some statistical modeling or some algorithms that are getting that starts to get into kind of more of a forward-looking view and giving you data in that regard versus the static timestamp old data. And all of this, as you kind of go up, starts to leverage, and that's what's on the right. You start to move from kind of a data insights to an advanced analytics. And all of this then helps you get more efficient. And when you start to thinking about automation, so this kind of has that flavor into it. Obviously you're not going to be able to automate a lot relative to reports. There is basic automation at the bottom, though. I won't say that. Being able to pull in data automatically or generate the reports automatically, send those via email. Some aren't there, and even doing that basic level of automation, but there's kind of a layer to this that's there as well. Then the next two levels are kind of the key ones, and most, those that are ahead of their class or peers are up in these categories, doing more predictive and even start to be prescriptive, where you're starting to apply, some level of probability outcome to it. Predictive is just kind of more of extrapolation. Prescriptive, you start to actually say, here's the decision that possibly should be made out of this, and gleaning that from the data. That's really the fundamental difference there. So if you look at, kind of predictive as an advanced analytics, it's really examining the data and the content. And prescriptive starts to actually bring some decision-making process where it's prescribing what action you would take out of that. And so that's really where you're then touching upon some of these more recent enabling technologies, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, RPA, cloud, 5G. So starting to get into, what that leveraging some of those types of tools. So you can probably see, and if you gave it some thought, you'd know where you are on here. We do this day in and day out, come in and help organizations and map them where they are, and by looking at their data, looking at what they're doing. So there's all sorts of ways to kind of analyze, and then once you have that recognition, that's an easier way to find your path to the next one. So we kind of have a methodology we go about doing that. Or I've seen this from organizations that do this relative to how mature they are and in kind of their data and analytics and even automation processes. But it fundamentally, if you kind of look at it, 4 different kind of loops to this. And again, this is loops because it is all iterative, each process. This isn't just kind of a linear, step as you move through doing this type of figuring out how to leverage data and bring your automation and those pieces together. But first is kind of just assessing your situation, as I just mentioned. Oh, I need to plug in. Sorry, 1 second. I don't want to lose there we go. So assessing that is kind of key: listening, evaluating, curating. But the next piece is aligning, and that was the part that I was talking about in the beginning, which I think is kind of one of the most critical parts of the process, so that you're on the right path, which is starting with the outcome, and then more importantly, breaking that down to what are the actions and decisions that I'm trying to make here in this analysis. It's not data just for data's sake and say that's interesting, to throw a stat out for once in a while. It's more about what can I actually do with that, and how can I advance my organization to do something better. So, and that's even starting to look at how I align external data sources, so it can't be so insular that you're only reflecting on the data that you have and can get access to, but how do you start to, leverage external sources to see and benchmark and being able to utilize that. That's a key piece to then really truly having that alignment, and you've got your business objectives or organizational objectives, your internal environment, and how that then reflects externally. Then once you're there, you can start moving into the solving, and that's where everybody wants to jump, right? Diving into kind of what's the business rules and governance, that is key. No doubt, you want to make sure that you are looking at the world from, as you move into leveraging analytics into an automation one of, making sure it's unbiased, making sure that it's truly reflective of what you're trying to achieve, and that's an alignment with your missions and goals in your organization. And then you can break that down tactically to what does the data model look like, what's the technology architecture look like, and solving and building all that. And then finally is the realization of it. How do you go about deploying it? How do you get the sponsorship, to drive out that this is the realize is where you're starting to get into a lot of the organizational change aspects. Because as we talked about, there's the data and there's the process, but there's also the people component to this. So how do you go about doing that in the most efficient manner and deploying that out? Definitely if you're starting to look at things from an enterprise or broader organization perspective, how you go about that and what are the recommendations to do that. So this is just a flavor. Everybody probably has their own set definitely from a consulting firm perspective. Some organizations that are really advanced have their own kind of approach that they use or have adopted it from somewhere. So I wanted to tell a story to bring that all together. A lot of kind of, theoretical pieces so far. Let's talk about some examples that we worked with from a Cherry Becker's standpoint that bring some of this to light. So City of Charlotte, don't know if any folks are out there from the City of Charlotte, but outstanding group. And this is a story about predictive data automation, and you can read the overview, but the net of it is that we were working with the City of Charlotte's Department of Transportation, and they were wanting to continue to improve on their ridership, and so one of the things that they knew was a barrier but didn't have quite the depth of it was their ticketing machines to be able to issue tickets. And obviously when a ticket kiosk goes down, can't get a ticket, lines back up, people miss their ride and don't utilize the transportation. So they wanted to go about utilizing data and figure out a way of how they could get ahead of predicting those kiosks would go out. They didn't want to be just reactive, which is what they were doing. They knew it'd go down and somebody would be there and call up and say, okay, we need someone to come out and maintain and fix this thing. Well, how do you get ahead of that? And that's the point of being starting to be predictive about it. And so what we helped them do is take the data that was associated with the ticket volumes and be able to analyze that. And once they started monitoring that it stopped or maybe slowed down, they knew they had a problem and they would issue somebody versus waiting for that phone call to come and say that it's down. It's not a huge step forward, but it definitely was a one step forward in terms of being able to predict when they had an issue and be able to drive that out. So we helped them build a Tableau environment. That was the technology they chose, and build in a dashboard that they had in a monitoring central location to be able to see when those were, and then ultimately be able to issue a maintenance order. So driving some automation out into that and be able to, deploy somebody to go out and fix it. So that was kind of ultimately a full circle process of being able to, drive at what was the action they wanted to take, which was to be more proactive about fixing these machines. They wanted to use the data. They knew they had the data, be able to leverage that, get it into a place that they could visualize it, and then even take the action associated with it of generating that maintenance order to be able to drive it out. So that's kind of the full piece of thinking through how does analytics and automation come together. It's not just, okay, great with, because some, if they hadn't really thought about the action that they wanted to take, would have just said, hey, I just want to see a dashboard of, my ticket volumes, which, it's kind of a logical thought process that many might do. But taking that extra step on what is the action we want to take from it, and being able to automate that, kick that process off versus someone having to go key it in, really was what made it, more efficient and increase the productivity associated with it. So really great story. They continue to look at new ways of, as they move forward, but just another way of how they've improved, their service to constituents. All right, Maryland Public Libraries, another example. Libraries have been around obviously for a long time. We worked with the state of Maryland, 24 public library systems. It's 23 counties and Baltimore City. And this has been an ongoing effort in terms of really just bringing about the data that they have just operationally to more visualize it. And if you think about kind of all the data elements that could be available to a library, it is there. The challenge is being able to derive that out and then being able to, drive out, actions and insights of things that they want to do. So Maryland wanted to improve the reporting efficiency through automation and data access and reporting by removing the need for manual and often time-consuming data pools. So this was a little bit of an automation in terms of back end being able to get the data out versus someone having to manually put it in. So a little bit introspective, but ultimately be able to serve with getting the data more timely, being able to have it at the fingertips in the right place. And that's a big key to it, especially during COVID. This was a very key solution that they utilized, to figure out how to, serve the public during COVID. When were the right times to be open? When were they not? What are the community needs and how? So they were able to analyze a lot of data very quickly utilizing these dashboards. And then they did do a little bit of forecasting associated with that in terms of some of the financial data. So we also built some executive level reports on their financials and how to forecast that, improve operational costs and per capita expenditures. So definitely, something that they were looking at, and then even bubbled that up to some executive board reports to try to drive some decisions at an executive board level. So lots of data. So you can see lots of visits, really trying to drive to a pretty tumultuous time in the pandemic to be able to improve, the service as well as gain more insights, and then even do some forecasting relative to some of their financial models as they went through that time. So great example. And there's more to come relative to this story. So they're continuing with driving out additional, actions and insights that they're trying to derive from their data. So that polling question number 3. The 4 key areas of data and automation methodology include listen, acquire, measure, and realize, assess, align, solve, and realize, assess, align, measure, and solve, none of the above. Give a little bit. Everybody's on their toes still. It's awesome. Just about to 90%. Some people got off track a little bit. I'll end this one here. So share these results. So 49% of you said assess, align, measure, and solve. 27% said assess, align, solve, and realize. And 18 on listen, acquire, measure, and realize, and then none of the above. So the answer was B, assess, align, solve, and realize. If you think about it in the sense that the drive is to solve the situation, not quite measure and then end on solve. Solve is really where your solution is, that you're looking to realize that and to deploy that out. So the solve does, you want to kind of solve the situation and then realize it on. Many different methodologies, many different approaches, and the words get confusing there, but yeah, that's kind of the approach that we take. All right, we'll keep going here. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the different ways and models that are emerging relative to, bridge this gap between analytics and automation. So if you kind of think about, first of all, that, we're continuously going through a heavy amount of transformation. Technology is turning and disrupting everything, and organizations are taking advantage of that in different ways. So only about 8% of companies, according to McKinsey, believe that their current business models will remain viable. There's a obviously big recognition that if you don't, move into a digital world, that you'll quickly become obsolete. And so, but it's not about just technology for technology's sake, and it's about improving the technology, but also transforming your entire business model. And that's the piece that is very profound in that statement, in the sense that if you kind of just look at things from a standpoint of the basic tenets of people, process, technology, that's fine. But what's happening in the disruption that's coming in is because people are rethinking the entire business model and how you go about it. And that's what is really then kind of truly transformational versus just starting to evolve and leverage technologies. So when you start to think about all the things that are available, and this is where we start to talk about digital platforms, and the key piece that from our perspective is, you see it on the right there. Digital platforms are tech-based business models with a mission to connect interests and people and promote value. So think about it in the terms of how you're going to create an entire digital business model and drive that for your organization. That's the type of monumental shift this brings about it. So when you look at the enabling technologies to do that, there's a big list here, a lot of things to decipher and talk through that I'm not going to go through it in a lot of depth, but just kind of flushing through a few of these things. Internet of Things is the first one, IoT, sensors, biometrics, beacons, being able to leverage all the things on the edge that are collecting data and engaging, even thinking about just video and cameras and what's out there. Obviously a huge area that can change how we approach the world in a variety of ways. I talked about autonomous logistics, didn't even hit upon blockchain and distributed data. Still to be determined, but the net of it is there is still a broader push here on how we integrate and look across outside of our organization in broader networks. is going to continue to evolve and get tighter and connected, especially as we look at some of the challenges relative to supply chains and and you start thinking about how other areas of financial models are connected. Cloud, I haven't hit upon that much because everybody is moving to the cloud. It's happening whether you want to or not, largely just because of how solutions are built today. But there is a fundamental difference between those that are, solutions that are built on the cloud and then those that are just migrated to the cloud. When you think about how you actually transform and build from the cloud, it's rethinking the model versus taking what I'm doing today and just kind of porting it over. That's taking advantage of some of the efficiencies, but it's not unlocking all the services and things that cloud brings to you with scalability, pervasiveness, access, centralized security. That is still one of the areas that's being looked at quite a bit relative to cloud is the security, but in general, it's going to continue to be the direction just for all the other efficiencies. So thinking about how you transform your business and leveraging cloud really needs to come from an understanding of what are the new ways I can rethink the services that I provide to my constituents or my clients and be able to do that, in a different way and building a full platform associated with it. That's even before you start getting to things at the bottom of the list that get, quantum computing and metaverse. I know, the metaverse is still something that's, being worked through, and what value is that going to bring? And people are thinking through that, whether that's going to be an investment they want to make, but it's clearly there, and there's going to be organizations that will look at how do they utilize that in serving their constituents. So what does that lead to? I mean, I think I wanted to kind of give some examples. Obviously there's kind of silos of data, there's silos of technologies. And when you start to think of the world in terms of a platform, at a minimum, you can start to bundle certain things together from a, how to operate, and looking at, taking the 1/3 from the left, collaboration. How do I collaborate, and how do I build a platform that's collaboration not only within my organization, but also externally? And what is that looking to drive from an outcome statement? So really thinking about collaboration in a broad-based way to combine data and knowledge management and to automate business processes is something that's really key in that regard. I want you think about then some industry specialization to this, and what I mean by that is obviously even across government, which the bulk of you here are part of at some level. Your particular area and how you're collaborating, maybe within your agency, outside, more broadly, and then how you're engaging your constituents in collaboration and engagement with them more as a platform. If you start to look at other areas, you see custom cloud applications. That's really where, as I was mentioning before, you're starting to look at, what is the platform that I can build that changes my business model completely. Not that I'm just trying to gain efficiencies of moving, processes and technology workloads to the cloud, but how do I really change and take advantage of what cloud has to offer to change the way that I operate, change the way my business model and what I'm trying to achieve is actually done, and how do I enable my workforce? How do I, innovate for growth? Looking at that entire chain. So these are just some examples of platforms. Obviously, some have a complete business model. This is a way to kind of look at discrete, maybe functions or areas that then can serve the same purpose and start to build upon. Obviously, the pandemic, though, did kind of shift everybody pretty quickly and dramatically to, how do I operate in kind of a virtual environment, a remote environment. That made a lot of people rethink and got a good taste of how that wholesale shift needs to be made. Unfortunately, that was over a very short period of time and a lot of disruption, but now you get a flavor of how do I completely rethink this, and what are the bounds of which I can create my platforms by which to operate. Okay. Do you see, it looks like we had some. Okay, somebody, Russell Presley, I see, when did this study occur? We actually did this work about a year and a half ago. We continue to monitor it. There's some folks that in the IT organization that we can connect you up with if you want to reach out to me at some point, and we can connect you there. So thank you for asking that. So polling question number 4, digital platforms are tech-based business models with a mission to connect interests and people and promote value, connect to the internet and promote sales, both A and B, and none of the above. All right, everybody's chiming in here quickly. Oh, very interesting. All right. Getting up there again. Just about 90%. All right. All right, I'll end it there. And share the results. So it looked like about 70% of you said both A and B. 24% connect interests and people and promote value. The answer was A, but it does definitely connect you to the internet and promote sales. So a little bit of a trick question there. You know, really, when you look at what you're trying to achieve, it is connecting those interests and people and promote value. In some cases, people are trying to promote sales, you know, and just connect to the internet. But really, it's about rethinking, how do you even provide the services? How do you actually even go about engaging your talent and your workforce to achieve that common mission you're trying to achieve and drive towards that. So all good stuff, but at the end of the day, really that connecting the interests and people and promoting the value of what you're trying to achieve as an organization is what building a digital platform about. Think about it just in terms of just a business model. If you were to create a whole new, organizational mission and what you're trying to achieve, thinking through in terms of doing that in the digital world, and you forget about kind of brick and mortar or from a physical location perspective, and what does that look like in the digital world completely, and how you serve, and then think about those other areas on how do you engage brick and mortar or in a physical context. All right, good. We'll keep going here. I think we've only got about a few more minutes. So what I was going to do is drop down. There's probably a couple different areas, maybe the solve in here. I thought give you a little bit more depth on kind of how to approach this. Most of you in that polling question got the assess and align. It was the solve and realize. And this is the piece that I think it's just bringing it to fruition on what you're everybody can kind of understand the strategy and what you're trying to achieve, but how you actually go about then breaking that down into a solve and realize, and maybe it's more the realize piece that now that I kind of talked through it a bit, that's the key encapsulated. I think the other one had solve in it for sure. But realize, think about it in terms of a journey or a journey map. This is the proverbial marathon, not a sprint, relative to bringing about analytics and driving out automation. This isn't I'm going to go and build something and then I'm done and it's there. It is a continuous process, and frankly, I would contend that you really want to do this in an agile way and drive towards some quick benefits early. That statistically is shown that successive programs that achieve some level of success early on and very rapidly are those that have long-term success as well. So So thinking about kind of what is the roadmap to, once you've solved, you've designed it right, you figured out all the alignment, you figured out, how this maps the strategy, gotten everybody, within the organization, external data points, how you bring all the, analytics and automation together. You built it and you solved it. How do you deploy it out, right? Because then you're talking about not only just a piece of I built something very cool, but actually how do I bring it to fruition? So really mapping out what is the most logical way to deploy that is really a key piece. And so when you think about the roadmap, it's about how you're going to get that continuous feedback loop, deploy the solution out to a variety of different groups. And maybe it's even out to your constituents and different groups, and being able to do so in a manner that's practical, brings some value, allows some feedback for improvement, and then continues to roll that out. So that's the piece that you want to think about when you build something or looking to build something. What is the long-term roadmap? And don't forget about optimization of it, and that you're going to continuously improve it. It's definitely a key feature to it, as well as just support existing what you have. Those are other layers of this as you go about that you don't want to miss out or forget about, because if you're not maintaining what you have and that goes wrong, you can start to really impact your utilization or solution or adjustment to that model. So and then clearly, if you're not continuing to optimize it, it's going to get stale and stagnant and not quite get there. So this, at the end of the day, the whole automation piece of it is really just, we're at the beginning of that. Obviously analytics is something that we've been working through in a while, but bringing those two together, it is definitely a journey and a roadmap, and not something that is going to happen overnight. So with that, I think I'm going to finish on that note. Really appreciate everybody's time and attention today. It was fabulous. I was impressed how quickly everybody's fingers were on the buttons relative to the polling questions. Hopefully this was insightful and gave you something to think about at a minimum. If not, open more thoughts and questions in your mind about how you can bring this to life in your organization. And then at a bare minimum, you're getting some CPE credits and continuing through your continuous learning, which is an important part of life. So thank you. I really appreciate everybody, and we will be in touch.
Yeah, thanks so much, Louis. Thank you for that insight. And you were right. Everybody had fast fingers going for those polls today. Hey, that concludes our session today. Thank you again for joining us. If you have any additional questions regarding today's topic, Louis' contact info is listed for you. Please feel free to reach out at any time. We do value your feedback and ask that you take part in a short survey that we will be sharing very soon. A reminder, our next and final session for today regarding state auditor updates for a North Carolina specific topic, that will begin in about 15 to 20 minutes at 11:50 Eastern. We hope to see you there. Thanks so much, everyone.